Welcome to lecture 15. Today we'll be working POGL exercise 6B called Radical Halogenation Reactions. This is page 73 in your POGL book. You'll have a lot more other radical halogenation reactions to practice on the in-chapter problems that are assigned, and then print those off, work those reactions, and then you can listen to the video and check your work. Okay? So let's work model 1. You go ahead and start working that as I write this on the iPad. So the first thing we have is homolytic cleavage. You know, you won't actually see me draw these electron flow arrows this way. And I'll also tell you why. These are electrons, and they actually go to the nucleus. What charge is the nucleus? Positive, isn't it? And the electrons are negative. So you should never have these electron flow arrows in the air. They're actually going like this one's going to go to the Y nucleus, and this one's going to go to the X nucleus, and this one's going to go to the Z nucleus. So they should always be pointing to a nucleus. And I would rather you learn that and do it correctly rather than incorrectly. Okay. So let's do 1A. Homolytic cleavage results in the formation of what? Those are radicals, aren't they? We learned that from the last POGL. In homolytic cleavage, the electrons that make up the AB single bond are divided up equally. Okay, so each electron here, one goes to A and one goes to B. That's homolytic cleavage. Okay, 1B. Once a radical is formed, it can quickly react to form another bond. Describe how bonds are formed in equation A. All right, so let's describe this. I would write the free radical X reacts with free radical Y to form a new sigma bond between X and Y. Okay, so that's a new sigma covalent bond. Describe how the bonds are forming in equation B. All right, well, equation B, we have, this is 1C, free radical Z reacts with covalently bonded Y to form a new single covalent bond between Y and Z, while creating a new free radical X. In which reaction are radicals formed as products? Equation B, we have a free radical here. Okay. And you'll learn that this is a propagation step, right? You have a free radical in the starting material, in the starting reactants, and a free radical is generated in the product. That's a propagation step. From what we were learning earlier, you have a radical and a radical, and they come together. That's a termination step. Okay, and then here you're going to learn that this is initiation step. Okay, so in which reaction are radicals consumed so there are no free radicals as products? That's equation A, termination step. Question number 2. In addition to forming the products shown in equation B, the following alternate reaction could also take place. Show the mechanism using curved half arrows for this reaction. All right, so let's do that one. Z, X, Y, and it's going to produce Y radical plus ZX. So how would you do that? Well, the free radical Z is forming a new bond with X, so it's got to come over here and take X. We need to split this with X and Y. So you should have those 3 electron flow fishhook arrows to illustrate that. All right, now we are on Model 2, page 74. I will write on this while you work your Model 2 questions, and then we can come together. This is a reaction of bromine radical with alkanes. And if we were in class, you'd be working this while I would be drawing this up on the board. This is another thing I'm going to do again. You see how I'm different than these electron flow arrows need to be pointed to a nucleus, or you will lose a half point when I'm grading your POGLs, and you'll lose more points on your assessments. They're worth a whole points on assessment. Equation C. This is equation D. This is equation E. All right, so let's answer questions 3A. In the reaction of a bromine radical with the alkanes in Model 2, what new bond is being formed? With the bromine, so we see the bromine here. Where does bromine go? So what did you write? HBr, hydrobromic acid. In the product, which atom has the radical electron? So here's this. Here's this. So what atom? The carbon. Label the carbon radicals from Model 2 as methyl, primary, secondary, tertiary. So methyl would be this. That would be primary. This would be secondary. And that would be tertiary. So the first one, carbon's bonded to one carbon. Primary, carbon is bonded to two carbons. Secondary, carbon is bonded to three carbons. Tertiary. Which reaction in Model 2 is the most likely to happen? Well, which one's going to be more stable? Well, we talked about the free radical being electron deficit. Okay, so these alkyl groups are electron donating. So the most stable would be the tertiary because of the electron donating groups of the alkyl groups. Okay, 4. Use curved arrows in equation D and E to illustrate the mechanism for the following reaction. And I'm just going to do it here. Okay, so this carbon here lost, the secondary carbon lost this hydrogen. So this bromine came and subtracted that hydrogen, and one of those electrons went with the hydrogen to form this bond, and the other electron went onto the carbon to form the free radical. So you see how I have 3 electron flow fishhook arrows in these mechanisms. Okay, so you're going to need to do this. This hydrogen here is the one that got abstracted. This bromine radical took that hydrogen and needed an electron homolytic cleavage, and there you go. You need to be able to do that. Okay, B. I don't really like question 4B. Because it's wrong, right? And it's even asking and saying, why would this not likely to occur? It's just disturbing to look at. Do you know why I find it disturbing to look at? Well, let's talk about it. Okay. The way these electron flow arrows are going, this is going in midair to there. This is going, the red one's going to the hydrogen, and then we have this other one that's going to there. Okay, and so what that is saying, because this is telling a story, this is saying that you're getting this product. So the way this is drawn here, they want you to draw this product plus H radical. Okay. You're not going to get a H will never form. Okay, it's not stable. All right, we are now on Model 3. This is radical chain reactions. The mechanism step-by-step pathway from reactants to products of a radical halogenation is a chain reaction. A reaction consists of the following 3 components. You need to be able to draw these. You're going to have open responses on these. So yes, you're going to have initiation, and that generates the free radical. You're going to have to draw propagation. And I don't require you to draw termination steps. You will be expected to do that on sapling. So this is methane. And the halogenation of an alkane follows the radical chain reaction mechanism. The product here is going to be the following: halogenation of the alkane plus HBr. Okay, so 5A. What is the first step of the radical chain reaction called? Initiation is the first step. Initiation involves generation of a radical. Are there any radicals present in the reaction shown in Model 3? No. No radicals are shown. If no radicals are present, what has happened chemically in order for the reaction to start? Okay, so that's your initiation step. A free radical must be generated first. Radicals are formed by homolytic bond cleavage when bromine is exposed to light or heat. Use curved arrows, single barb, to show this initiation step. So these electrons, one goes with that bromine, the other one goes with that bromine, and you get 2 bromine radicals. And that's your initiation step. Okay, 6A, what's the second step called? Propagation, okay? What has to happen chemically in order to continue the radical chain reaction? Well, you have to react a radical to form. So we have a radical reacts, and then you have to form a radical. If you don't keep forming a radical, you can't have propagation. You cannot keep going. Propagation. It's in the word propagation. Okay, so 6C. Use curved arrows, single barb, to show the 2 propagation steps leading to the product, bromomethane. Not all of the Br2 is consumed in the initiation step. All right, so the propagation step here, P1, you always start with your alkane. And you react it from your initiation step, the bromine radical. And then so we have a radical plus a neutral compound. And then you can show the electron taking the hydrogen. You got your 3 barbed arrows to generate the new radical plus HBr. That's your first, P1. P2 then, you have 2 propagation steps. You've got to start with, go back up to your equation, the Br plus the free radical that was generated just now. Then what happens? This free radical attacks. You always start with your electron, and where does it go? And then forms a new compound, which is what you want. See? This is what you want. You see that molecule? Plus, you generate a new radical, just like the initiation. So it keeps going. What is the third step of the radical chain reaction? That would be termination. All right. And What has to happen chemically to stop the reaction? Two radicals have to combine. Show two possible chain termination steps where two radicals combine. Okay, before we do that, I just want to also go ahead and show you that these propagation steps 1 and 2, they have to add up to that overall reaction. So you have, let's look at this reaction like we would in Hess's law, and let's just say, okay, so we have methane. Where is methane? There's methane. You have Br. Where's Br? See how that's on the reactant side? Reactant side. Now we go to the product side. Okay, where do we have the product? We have the HBr, which you have right here, and then you have your alkyl halide right there. Okay, so then what is spectator ions? The radicals, Br, they cancel out. Methyl radical, methyl radical. And so if you add this up, it's going to equal your overall reaction. All right, let's just finish up with 7C. Can you come up with some chain termination reactions? They want 2. And people would come up and they would go to the board if we were in the class, and we would see how many we could get. Okay. So see if you got any of these. Okay, so those would be your termination. We are down to one more model, model 4. Okay, this is about the selectivity. Okay, so selective halogenation. So if you remember, I told you we don't do fluorine in these reactions because it's explosive. It reacts so fast, okay? And bromination is something that you would do in the lab because look at the selectivity here. Chlorination can be done in the lab, and iodination is so slow you will probably die and have 3 more generations of children pass you on before you would iodinate an alkane. All right, so let's read 8. A selective reaction gives you close to 100% product. An unselective reaction gives a mixture of products. Which reaction is selective? Did you write bromination? Yep, because that's the 97%. The major product obtained for either bromination or chlorination of propane is derived from the secondary. Did you write secondary? Secondary carbon or free radical. And these are those bond dissociation energies we talked about. Explain why the major product in Model 4 is formed more readily than the minor product. And if you look at your bond dissociation energies, what do we say, page like 203 in your textbook? The bond dissociation to form a secondary radical is 413 kilojoules per mole to break that carbon-hydrogen bond, and to form a primary, it's 423 to break the carbon hydrogen. Now, before we go on to the additional problems, there's one other concept I wanted to bring to your attention from your textbook and your slides that is not addressed in this model or this POGL, but it's important. And it is page 218 and 19 in your textbook, and it's called Hammonds postulate. So what is Hammond's postulate? It's related species that are closer in energy are also closer in structure. The structure of a transition state resembles the structure of the closest stable species. Okay, so if you look at those reaction energy diagrams, so energy goes here, reaction coordinate goes here, you're going to see this, and this is a reaction coordinate here. Okay, and so this is propane. Okay, plus your free radical. This is secondary transition state. This is a primary transition state. This is your valley. So this is just your P1. We're just looking at P1. And this is the secondary plus HBr. And this here is your primary plus HBr. Okay. The energy difference between these are your transition states is about 9 kilojoules. Now, this is for bromination. This is why bromine is selective, is more selective than chlorine, than chlorination. It has to do a little bit with Hammond's postulate, or it's just an introduction of it. Okay, so if we do the same thing here with chlorination, and we say this is our secondary transition state, and we get HCl, secondary, and then here this is our primary, and okay, so the energy difference between these two is about 4 kilojoules. So this is step 1, P1, is from your starting material to your intermediate. Is that endothermic or exothermic? Endothermic. Okay. And the transition states here are closer to your products due to the large activation energy. In chlorination, you see how P1, this is an exothermic reaction. You see the difference here? So what's the delta H? Here, what's your delta H? See, this is endothermic, this is exothermic. So in a chlorination, your transition states are closer to the reactants. So your transition states are closer to your reactants here, and your transition states are closer to your products here. So that's Hammond's postulate. In endothermic bromination, the transition states are closer to the products, the radicals. that energy in the structure. This is how we think of what does that structure probably look like for the transition step. So endothermic reactions, the transition states are closer to the products in energy. In the exothermic reaction, the transition state is closer to the reactants and the structure. And that's just, Hammond's postulate just kind of helps you understand what that transition state might be. It really doesn't do anything other than that. But what I want to point out is the reason why fluorine is explosive. So fluorination is explosive, okay, because it is so exothermic. When I think of something that's exothermic, a bonfire, it starts a fire, it gives off that heat, okay? So fluorine is explosive, so very dangerous. Chlorination, the P1 step, is, and you can do the bond dissociation energies, and you might have to do that in sapling for the P1, and you'll see that this is a slightly exothermic reaction, and that's why it's not selective. That's why you will get chlorination on primary and secondary and tertiary. But bromination, because of the P1, is endothermic, it's selective. Okay, so now we can predominantly get a tertiary alkylation over a secondary or a primary. Iodination, P1 of iodination, and you can do those bond dissociation energies for P1, and you will see, in fact, I'm going to add that on there. And I want you to do this exercise, and I want you to see that iodination is very endothermic. So and we'll just do P1. So I want to add on additional exercises, okay? And I want you to compare, because we would do this in class, the P1 bond dissociation energies for fluorine, chlorine, bromine, and iodide. So what we'll do is we'll do CH4 plus fluorine goes to CH3F plus HF, okay? And so for P1 for that would be CH4 plus F goes to CH3 plus HF. And you only have to do the D here. So you're doing the bonds broken minus bonds formed. And so you look at a primary, look at page 203, and you're going to do that for just the P1 here. And the question is this endothermic, this step, or exothermic? Okay, so then I want you could write that for P1 for CH4 plus chlorine goes to CH3 radical plus HCl. P1 CH4 plus bromine radical goes to CH3 radical plus HBr, and then the P1 for CH4 plus iodide radical goes to CH3 plus HI. Okay, and so when you calculate that, tell me, is it endo or exothermic, and by how much? And that's why you're going to find, if you do this correctly, that this is explosive. Okay, so that means it should be very exothermic. Iodide will be very endothermic, and so it's not reactive. And chlorine is not selective, but it'll happen, and bromine is selective. And the other thing I need to point out too is we've talked about now that tertiary carbocations are more stable than secondary, which are more stable than primary, which are more stable than a methyl. Okay, and we've also talked about free radical. So a free radical tertiary is going to form over a secondary over a primary over a methyl. Okay, this is a methyl. There's no halogens there. But I want you also to go ahead and include a benzylic. Okay, so that's a benzylic radical. This is a carbocation radical, because you're going to see in sapling. And those are equivalent to a allylic. Allylic radical and a allylic. So this is called a allylic cation. This is a allylic radical. And this is benzylic. See, it's the carbon right next to the aromatic carbocation. And this is a benzylic radical. And the reason why these are more stable, it's not just the, it's not the alkyl donating groups, but it's the resonance, okay? And so you could draw with like the allylic free radical. Okay, you're dealing with sp2, sp2, sp2. We could draw resonance arrows. This goes here, this goes there, this goes there. And resonance always wins, folks, okay? So this will form, and this will form faster than your tertiary. Okay, so go ahead and get used to doing that. I'm just going to look at your additional problems here. I would like to see you draw your mechanisms for 11. I would like to see your initiation and propagation. You don't have to do your termination steps on there, but you do have to show all your products made and then box in your major one. And as I look at 11B, they're showing you a benzylic example. 12 is showing you an allylic example. So go ahead for 11, 12 and show initiation, propagation. Go ahead and show one termination for 12. And then it looks like 13, I just want to say that that is a free radical inhibitor. And it's putting your cereals and a lot of your foods, and you're going to basically abstract whatever's your most acidic proton in that BHA molecule will also be the easiest to extract for free radical. And then you need to draw those resonance structures associated with that free radical. And that wraps up chapter 4.